Jake Morrison always dreamed of going to space. As a kid, he would stare at the moon for hours, imagining what it would be like to walk on its surface. Now, at 35 years old, he was finally living his dream. He was an astronaut on a solo mission to the moon. The small spacecraft hummed softly as Jake checked his instruments. Everything looked good. He was on track to land at the planned site in the Sea of Tranquility. His heart raced with excitement. He would be the first human to visit the moon in over 50 years. Mission Control, this is Morrison. All systems are go. Beginning descent to lunar surface, Jake reported. Copy that, Morrison. You're looking good from here. Godspeed, came the reply from Earth. Jake took a deep breath and began the landing sequence. The moon's gray, cratered surface grew larger in his viewport. He could see the landing site ahead, a flat area perfect for touchdown. Suddenly, a red light flashed on his control panel. An alarm blared through the cabin. What the? Jake muttered, his eyes darting across the instruments. Something was wrong with the landing gear. Very wrong. Mission Control, I've got a problem here, Jake said, trying to keep his voice calm. Landing gear isn't responding. I repeat, landing gear is not responding. Copy, Morrison. We're seeing it too. Can you switch to backup systems? Jake's fingers flew across the controls, flipping switches and pressing buttons. Nothing worked. The spacecraft was dropping too fast now, the moon's surface rushing up to meet him. Negative. Mission Control. Backup systems are not engaging. I'm losing control of the descent. Panic rose in Jake's chest. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He had trained for years for this mission. It couldn't end like this. Morrison, abort landing. I repeat, abort landing. The voice from Mission Control was urgent now. But it was too late. Jake's spacecraft was in a nosedive, heading straight for the lunar surface. He gripped the controls tightly, using all his strength to try and level out the craft. The ground was coming up fast. Brace for impact. Jake yelled, more to himself than to Mission Control. The spacecraft hit the moon's surface with a sickening crunch. Metal screeched and tore. Jake was thrown forward, his helmet smashing against the control panel. Pain exploded in his head, and everything went dark. When Jake opened his eyes, he wasn't sure how much time had passed. His head throbbed, and he tasted blood in his mouth. The cabin was dark, lit only by a few flickering emergency lights. He tried to move but gasped in pain. His left arm was definitely broken, and he suspected he had some cracked ribs too. The front viewport was shattered, and moon dust was slowly drifting into the cabin. Mission Control, do you copy? Jake croaked into his helmet mic. Only static answered him. Panic set in as the reality of his situation hit him. He was stranded on the moon, injured with a broken spacecraft. His oxygen supply wouldn't last forever, if help didn't come soon. No, he couldn't think like that. Someone would come for him. They had to. A shadow fell across the broken viewport. Jake's heart skipped a beat. Had help arrived already? But as his eyes focused on the figure outside, Jake felt his breath catch in his throat. It wasn't human, not even close. The creature was tall and slender, with grayish-blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the stark lunar light. It had 4 arms and a large, oval-shaped head with enormous, liquid black eyes. It wore no spacesuit, seeming perfectly at home in the moon's harsh environment. Jake's mind reeled. This couldn't be real. He must have hit his head harder than he thought. Maybe he was hallucinating from lack of oxygen. But as the alien reached out one of its 4 hands and began to pull away the twisted metal of the spacecraft, Jake realized this was no hallucination. First contact wasn't supposed to happen like this. Not here, not now, not when he was broken and bleeding in a crashed spacecraft on the moon. As the alien's face came closer to the viewport, its large eyes blinking slowly, Jake had one last coherent thought before shock overtook him. Well, This changes everything. Jake Morrison's head was spinning. He blinked hard, trying to clear his vision. The alien was still there, its large black eyes staring at him through the broken viewport. This was real. It was happening. The creature made a series of clicks and whistles. Was it trying to communicate? Jake's astronaut training hadn't prepared him for this. He raised his good hand slowly, palm out, hoping the gesture would be seen as peaceful. The alien tilted its head, seeming curious. Then, to Jake's amazement, it mimicked his gesture, raising one of its 4 hands. "Okay," Jake muttered to himself. "At least it's not trying to eat me." The alien began to work on the damaged spacecraft, its multiple arms moving with surprising grace. It was clearing away the debris, creating an opening large enough for Jake to exit. Jake's survival instincts kicked in. He needed to get out of the craft. His oxygen supply wouldn't last forever, and he didn't know how long he'd been unconscious. With great effort, he unbuckled his harness and tried to stand. Pain shot through his body. His left arm hung uselessly at his side, and every breath sent sharp stabs through his chest. But he had to move. As Jake stumbled towards the opening, the alien reached in to help him. Its touch was gentle, surprisingly warm through Jake's spacesuit. With the creature's assistance, he managed to climb out of the wreckage. Standing on the lunar surface, Jake took in his surroundings. The familiar Earth hung in the black sky, a blue marble suspended in space. The crash site was a mess of twisted metal and scattered equipment. And next to him stood an honest-to-goodness alien. The creature was even more impressive up close. It stood at least 7 feet tall, its body lean and flexible. Its skin had a metallic sheen to it, shifting colors slightly as it moved. The 4 arms ended in hands with 3 long fingers each. Jake's scientific curiosity began to override his fear. How did it breathe in the lunar vacuum? How did it communicate? Where did it come from? The alien gestured towards Jake's injured arm, then pointed to the horizon. It seemed to want Jake to follow it. Jake hesitated. His training told him to stay with the craft, to wait for rescue. But his oxygen was limited, and this alien seemed to be offering help. What choice did he have? He nodded to the alien and took a step forward. Immediately, he stumbled, still disoriented from his injuries. The alien caught him with 2 of its arms, supporting him gently. Together, they began to move across the lunar landscape. Jake's boots left clear footprints in the dust, while the alien's feet barely seemed to touch the ground. It moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible in the low gravity. As they walked, Jake tried to make sense of what was happening. Aliens on the moon. It was the discovery of the century, maybe of all human history, and he, Jake Morrison, was the first to make contact. If he survived to tell anyone about it. After what felt like hours of slow, painful progress, Jake saw something on the horizon. At first, he thought it was a mirage, a trick of the harsh lunar light. But as they got closer, he realized what he was seeing. It was a dome, a massive, shimmering dome rising out of the lunar surface. The alien city, a base. Jake's mind raced with possibilities. The alien gestured towards the dome, making more of those clicking and whistling sounds. It seemed excited. Jake's breath fogged his helmet as he panted with exertion. His injuries throbbed, and he knew he was pushing his limits. But the promise of shelter, of answers, kept him moving forward. As they approached the dome, a section of it seemed to ripple and then open, creating an entranceway. Jake could see glimpses of structures inside, of movement. He hesitated at the threshold. Once he stepped inside, there would be no going back. He would be the first human to enter an alien structure, to breathe alien air, he hoped. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. The alien waited patiently, its large eyes blinking at Jake. It made a gesture that seemed almost reassuring. Jake took a deep breath, wincing at the pain in his ribs. "Well," he said to himself, "I didn't come all the way to the moon to chicken out now." With the alien's support, Jake Morrison took a step forward, crossing the threshold into a new world. The doorway sealed behind them with a soft hiss. Inside the dome, Jake's adventure was just beginning. As Jake Morrison stepped inside the alien dome, he felt a rush of air. His suit's sensors beeped, indicating a breathable atmosphere. With shaky hands, he reached up to remove his helmet. The alien watched him curiously, its large eyes blinking. Jake took a deep breath of the alien air. It tasted slightly metallic but was otherwise fine. He felt dizzy with the realization. He was breathing on the moon, inside an alien structure. "Thank you," Jake said to the alien, his voice hoarse, "for saving me." The creature tilted its head, making a series of soft clicks and whistles. Jake sighed. Of course it couldn't understand English. How were they going to communicate? The alien gestured for Jake to follow. They walked through curved corridors that seemed to glow with a soft, blue light. Jake's eyes darted everywhere, trying to take in all the strange and wonderful sights. They entered a large, circular room. In the center stood a tall, cylindrical machine. The alien guided Jake towards it. "What is this?" Jake asked, forgetting for a moment that the alien couldn't understand him. The creature touched the machine, and it hummed to life. A holographic display appeared in the air between them. Jake's eyes widened in amazement. The alien pointed to itself, then made a series of gestures. The hologram changed, showing a simplified figure that looked like the alien. Then it pointed to Jake and repeated the process. The hologram split, now showing both an alien figure and a human figure. Jake began to understand. "It's some kind of translation device," he muttered to himself. The alien nodded vigorously. It understood that gesture. Excited, Jake pointed to himself. "Jake," he said clearly. The hologram flickered, and a sound emerged, a mix of clicks and whistles that seemed to be the alien's version of his name. The alien repeated the sound, then made a different series of clicks and whistles. The hologram showed its name in alien script, which then morphed into English letters. "Zorax." "Zorax," Jake repeated, testing the name. The alien, Zorax, made a sound that Jake could have sworn was a laugh. Over the next few hours, Jake and Zorax worked with the translation device. They started with simple concepts, pointing to objects in the room and naming them, then moved on to basic actions and emotions. Jake's head was spinning with all the new information, but he was thrilled. He was communicating with an alien. Wait until the folks back at NASA heard about this. NASA. Earth. Jake's excitement dimmed as he remembered his situation. He was still stranded on the moon, injured, with no way to contact home. Sensing his change in mood, Zorax made a questioning sound. Jake pointed to his injured arm and ribs, then mimicked pain. The hologram flickered, showing a human figure with highlighted injuries. Zorax nodded in understanding. It gestured for Jake to follow again, leading him to another room. This one looked like some kind of medical bay, with strange devices Jake couldn't begin to understand. Zorax pointed to a bed-like structure, indicating Jake should lie down. Jake hesitated. He trusted Zorax. After all, the alien had saved his life, but he was about to submit to alien medical treatment. What if their biology was too different? What if it made things worse? But as another wave of pain washed over him, Jake realized he didn't have much choice. He carefully lay down on the bed. Zorax worked quickly, using devices that hummed and glowed. Jake felt warmth spreading through his injured arm and ribs. The pain began to fade. After what seemed like only minutes, Zorax helped Jake sit up. To his amazement, Jake could move his arm again. He took a deep breath, feeling no pain in his ribs. "Thank you," Jake said, his voice full of emotion. He used the gesture they had established earlier for gratitude. Zorax responded with the alien equivalent of a smile. Just then, a loud alarm began to sound. Zorax's expression changed to one of concern. It rushed to a nearby console, its 4 arms moving rapidly over the controls. A large screen lit up, showing the lunar surface. Jake gasped as he saw what had triggered the alarm. A human rescue ship was approaching the moon. Earth had come looking for him, but how would they react to discovering an alien base? Jake looked at Zorax, seeing his own concern mirrored in those large alien eyes. Their newfound friendship was about to face its first real test. Jake Morrison stared at the screen, his heart racing. The human rescue ship was getting closer to the moon's surface. He turned to Zorax, his alien friend, and saw worry in those large, dark eyes. "We need to do something," Jake said, gesturing to the screen, and then to himself and Zorax. The translation device hummed, converting his words to clicks and whistles. Zorax nodded, its 4 arms moving quickly over the control panel. A new image appeared on the screen, a detailed map of the lunar surface. Jake realized with a start that it showed not just the visible craters and plains, but also a network of hidden structures beneath the surface. The alien base wasn't just a single dome. It was an entire city, stretching for miles under the moon's crust. Zorax pointed to a blinking dot on the map, the location of Jake's crashed spacecraft. Then it traced a path from there to their current location. Jake understood. They needed to intercept the rescue team before they stumbled upon the alien city. But how? Jake asked, mimicking walking with his fingers. "It took us hours to get here." Zorax made a sound that Jake had come to recognize as laughter. It led him to another room, where several odd-looking vehicles were parked. They looked like a cross between a motorcycle and a hovercraft, sleek and silver. Jake's eyes widened with excitement. "We're going to ride those." Zorax nodded, already moving towards one of the vehicles. It showed Jake how to mount the craft and activate it. The vehicle hummed to life, floating a few inches off the ground. Jake carefully got on his own craft, finding it surprisingly comfortable. Zorax handed him a helmet, not a bulky spacesuit, but a slim, transparent bubble that fit snugly over his head. They sped out of the dome, the entrance rising open just long enough for them to pass through. Jake gasped as they shot across the lunar surface. The ride was incredibly smooth, the craft gliding over craters and rocks as if they weren't there. As they raced towards Jake's crash site, he marveled at Zorax's skill. The alien navigated the difficult terrain with ease, its 4 arms working in perfect harmony to control the craft. They reached the crash site just as the rescue ship was touching down. Jake could see figures in NASA spacesuits emerging from the ship, moving cautiously towards his wrecked craft. Zorax brought them to a stop behind a large boulder, out of sight of the rescue team. It turned to Jake, its expression serious. Jake understood the unspoken question. What now? Jake took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would change human history forever. He was about to reveal the existence of intelligent alien life to his fellow humans. He gestured to Zorax to wait, then stepped out from behind the boulder, waving his arms to attract the rescue team's attention. The NASA astronauts froze, clearly shocked to see Jake alive and walking around on the lunar surface without a spacesuit. Jake could imagine their confusion and disbelief. "It's okay," he called out, hoping his helmet would transmit his voice to their suits. "I'm all right, but there's something you need to see." He turned and beckoned to Zorax. The alien hesitated for a moment, then slowly emerged from behind the boulder. Jake heard gasps of shock through his helmet's comm system. The rescue team took a step back, some reaching for equipment at their belts, probably weapons. "No, wait," Jake shouted, stepping between Zorax and the humans. "It's friendly. It saved my life." There was a tense moment as the humans and the alien regarded each other. Jake's heart pounded. Everything depended on what happened in the next few minutes. Then, slowly, one of the NASA astronauts stepped forward. The figure reached up and removed its helmet, revealing the face of a middle-aged woman with graying hair and kind eyes. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, Mission Commander," she said, her voice filled with awe. "And I think you have quite a story to tell us, Jake." Jake nodded, relief washing over him. "You have no idea, Dr. Chen. But first, I'd like you to meet my friend, Zorax." As Jake began to explain the incredible events of the past few hours, he could see the wonder and excitement growing in Dr. Chen's eyes. The other astronauts crowded closer, their initial fear giving way to curiosity. Zorax, sensing the change in mood, stepped forward and raised one of its hands in a perfect imitation of a human wave. Jake grinned. This was just the beginning. The hidden lunar base, the advanced alien technology, the potential for interspecies cooperation, it was all going to change everything. As he continued his explanation, Jake knew that the real adventure was only just starting. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Dr. Sarah Chen and her team listened in amazement as Jake Morrison recounted his incredible adventure. Zorax stood quietly nearby, occasionally adding chirps and whistles that Jake did his best to translate. "So you're saying," Dr. Chen said slowly, "that there's an entire alien city hidden beneath the moon's surface?" Jake nodded. "It's incredible, Dr. Chen. The technology they have, it's like nothing we've ever seen." One of the other astronauts, a young man named Mike, spoke up. "But how is this possible? We've been studying the moon for decades. How did we miss this?" Zorax made a series of complicated gestures. Jake, with the help of the translation device he'd brought from the alien base, interpreted. "They have technology that hides them from our sensors. They've been here for thousands of years." The humans exchanged shocked glances. Dr. Chen's face was a mix of excitement and concern. This changes everything. We need to report this to Mission Control immediately." And that's when the real complications began. As soon as the news reached Earth, it spread like wildfire. World leaders demanded emergency meetings. Scientists from every field clamored for more information. The media went into a frenzy, with wild speculations flying across the globe. Back on the moon, Jake found himself in the middle of a storm. He was bombarded with questions from Earth via video link, trying his best to explain the situation while also protecting Zorax and the other aliens from too much scrutiny. "No, Mr. President," Jake said for what felt like the 100th time. "I don't believe they pose any threat to Earth. They've been here for thousands of years without interfering with us." But not everyone was convinced. Some world leaders saw the aliens as a potential threat. Others saw them as an opportunity for new technology and power. Everyone seemed to have an opinion on what should be done. Zorax and the other aliens watched these developments with growing concern. They had lived in peace and secrecy for so long, and now their world was being turned upside down. One evening, as Jake was taking a break from another long video conference, Zorax approached him. The alien's usually calm demeanor seemed troubled. "What's wrong?" Jake asked, immediately concerned. Zorax's response, translated through their device, was sobering. "Some of my people are afraid, Jake. They think perhaps it was a mistake to reveal ourselves to humans." Jake felt a pang of guilt. He hadn't considered how all this attention might affect the aliens. "I'm sorry, Zorax. I never meant to cause problems for your people." Zorax made a gesture that Jake had come to recognize as understanding. "We know you meant well, Jake. But the question remains, what happens now?" It was a good question. Earth was divided on how to proceed. Some nations wanted to establish immediate diplomatic relations with the aliens. Others wanted to approach more cautiously, studying the aliens from a distance. And a few, worryingly, were talking about the military implications of alien technology. Dr. Chen, who had become a trusted friend to both Jake and Zorax, summed it up best. "We're at a crossroads," she said during one of their meetings. "This could be the beginning of a new era of interstellar cooperation and advancement." Or, she didn't need to finish the thought. They all knew the alternative: misunderstanding, fear, and potentially conflict. Jake looked from Dr. Chen to Zorax, feeling the weight of the situation. He realized that he was in a unique position. He understood both sides, the human perspective and the alien one. Maybe he could help bridge the gap. "I have an idea," Jake said slowly. "What if we invited a small delegation from Earth to visit the alien city? Not politicians or military leaders, but scientists and diplomats. People who can approach this with an open mind." Zorax considered this for a moment, then nodded. "It is risky," the alien said through the translator, "but perhaps necessary. We cannot go back to hiding now." Dr. Chen smiled. "It's a good idea, Jake. I'll propose it to the UN committee. It might be our best chance at building trust and understanding." As the others discussed the details, Jake gazed out at the stark lunar landscape. Somewhere out there, Earth was shining in the black sky, unaware that its future was being decided right here on its lonely satellite. Jake took a deep breath. He had started this journey as a simple astronaut on a solo mission. Now he found himself as a bridge between two worlds, with the fate of human-alien relations resting partly on his shoulders. Whatever happened next, Jake knew one thing for certain: life would never be the same again, for humans or aliens. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Jake Morrison found himself at the center of an unprecedented diplomatic mission. His idea of bringing a small delegation to the alien city had been approved, but organizing it was proving to be a challenge. "No, we can't bring weapons into the alien city," Jake explained patiently to the UN security team. "It's a gesture of trust. We need to show we come in peace." Dr. Sarah Chen nodded in agreement. "Our scanners show the air is breathable in their dome. We'll wear simple protective suits, not full space gear. It's another sign of goodwill." After much debate, a team was chosen. It included Dr. Chen, a linguist, a diplomat, and a scientist specializing in extraterrestrial studies. Jake would act as their guide and translator. The day of the visit arrived. Jake and Zorax waited nervously at the entrance to the alien dome. The human delegation approached slowly, their eyes wide with wonder. "Welcome to Lunara," Zorax said through the translation device. It was the first time the aliens had revealed the name of their moon city. The human delegation gasped as they entered the dome. The alien architecture was like nothing they had ever seen, with sweeping curves and materials that seemed to glow from within. "It's incredible," breathed Dr. Chen, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial nervousness. Jake couldn't help but smile. He remembered his own awe when he first saw the city. "Wait until you see the rest," he said. Zorax led them through the city, explaining its history and technology. The aliens, they learned, had come to the moon thousands of years ago, seeking a peaceful place to build their civilization. "We watched Earth from afar," Zorax explained. "We saw your wars, but also your progress. We debated many times whether to reveal ourselves." The linguist, Dr. Patel, was fascinated by the translation device. "This technology could revolutionize communication on Earth," she said excitedly. The diplomat, Mr. Nkosi, had more practical concerns. "What do your people want from this relationship with Earth?" he asked Zorax. Zorax's answer was simple but profound. "Knowledge. Understanding. Perhaps, in time, friendship." As they toured the city, Jake noticed the human delegation relaxing. Their initial fear was being replaced by curiosity and excitement. This, he thought, was exactly what he had hoped for. But the real test came when they reached the city's central chamber. Here, the full council of alien leaders waited to meet them. Jake felt a moment of panic. This wasn't part of the plan. He looked at Zorax, who made a gesture he now recognized as reassurance. "My people felt it was important to meet your leaders directly," Zorax explained, "to show our trust." The human delegation hesitated for a moment. Then Dr. Chen stepped forward, a warm smile on her face. "On behalf of the people of Earth," she said, "we are honored to meet you." What followed was a discussion that Jake knew would be remembered in history books. The aliens shared their hopes for peaceful coexistence and scientific exchange. The humans, in turn, expressed their desire to learn and grow alongside their new cosmic neighbors. There were tense moments, of course. Mr. Nkosi had to navigate some tricky diplomatic waters when the aliens asked about Earth's military capabilities. Dr. Patel stumbled over some cultural misunderstandings that the translation device couldn't quite handle. But overall, the meeting was a success. As it drew to a close, the Alien Council made an unprecedented offer. They would send a representative to Earth to continue the discussions. The human delegation was stunned. This was more than they had dared hope for. "Who will you send?" Dr. Chen asked. All eyes in the room turned to Zorax. Jake felt a mix of excitement and sadness. His alien friend, the one who had saved his life and shown him wonders beyond imagination, would be leaving the moon. Zorax turned to Jake, its large eyes blinking slowly. "Will you come with me, Jake? Earth will need a translator, someone who understands both sides." Jake's heart raced. Return to Earth as an ambassador to an alien species. It was beyond anything he had ever dreamed of. "It would be my honor," Jake said, his voice thick with emotion. As they prepared to leave the alien city, Jake looked back at the magnificent structures that had been his home for the past weeks. He thought about the incredible journey that had brought him here, from a crash landing to the brink of a new era for humanity. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Jake knew one thing for certain. The future was going to be extraordinary. The journey back to Earth was nothing like Jake Morrison had imagined when he first left on his solo mission to the moon. Now, he sat beside Zorax in a sleek alien shuttle, watching the blue planet grow larger in the view screen. "Nervous?" Jake asked his alien friend. Zorax made a sound that Jake had come to recognize as a chuckle. Excited, the alien replied through the translator, "Your world has much to teach us, just as we have much to share." As they entered Earth's atmosphere, Jake felt a mix of emotions. He was thrilled to be part of this historic moment, but also apprehensive. How would the world react to Zorax? The shuttle landed smoothly on a specially prepared area at the United Nations headquarters in New York. As the door opened, Jake took a deep breath. "Ready?" he asked Zorax. The alien nodded, its four arms moving in a gesture of determination. They stepped out together into the bright sunlight. A hushed silence fell over the gathered crowd of world leaders, scientists, and media. Then, slowly, applause began to build, growing into a thunderous ovation. Jake smiled, relief washing over him. It was a good start. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, interviews, and demonstrations. Zorax met with world leaders, answered questions from curious scientists, and even appeared on popular talk shows. Jake was by Zorax's side through it all, translating and helping to bridge the cultural gap. He watched with pride as people's initial fear and suspicion gave way to curiosity and excitement. There were challenges, of course. Some religious groups struggled to reconcile their beliefs with the existence of alien life. Military leaders from various countries were eager to learn about alien technology, leading to tense negotiations. But for every obstacle, there were moments of incredible progress. Zorax shared advancements in clean energy that promised to revolutionize Earth's fight against climate change. Medical researchers were ecstatic about the potential applications of alien healing technology. 1 month after their arrival, Jake and Zorax stood before the United Nations General Assembly. It was time for a historic announcement. "People of Earth," Jake began, his voice carrying to millions watching around the world. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter in human history. Ambassador Zorax and I are here to present a proposal for an interstellar alliance." A murmur ran through the assembly. Zorax stepped forward, its translated words ringing clear through the hall. "We offer friendship, knowledge, and cooperation," the alien said. "Together, we can explore the stars, advance science, and build a peaceful future for both our peoples." What followed was a series of agreements that would change the course of human history. Earth and Lunara would establish regular exchanges of knowledge and culture. A joint space exploration program would be launched. And perhaps most importantly, a framework for peaceful coexistence was laid out. As Jake watched the Earth's representatives sign the historic treaty, he thought back to that terrifying moment when his ship crashed on the moon. Who could have imagined it would lead to this? Later that evening, Jake and Zorax stood on the balcony of their hotel, looking out over the New York skyline. "Your world is beautiful," Zorax said, "so full of life and potential." Jake nodded. "It's not perfect, but we're trying to make it better. And now, with your help, who knows what we can achieve?" Zorax made a gesture of agreement. "This is just the beginning, Jake. There is so much more to explore, so much more to learn." As they looked up at the night sky, Jake could just make out the faint outline of the moon. Somewhere up there was the crash site where this incredible journey began. And beyond that, countless stars and planets, each holding new possibilities. Jake thought about the future that lay ahead. Humans and aliens working side by side, exploring the cosmos, solving problems that had once seemed insurmountable. It was a future filled with hope, wonder, and endless potential. "You know," Jake said with a smile, "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad my ship crashed on the moon." Zorax's response came through the translator, tinged with what Jake now recognized as affection. "As am I, my friend. As am I." As they stood there, an alien and a human united in friendship, Jake knew that this truly was the dawn of a new era. An era of interstellar cooperation, of boundless discovery, and of a united Earth reaching out to touch the stars. The adventure that began with a crash landing on the moon was far from over. In fact, Jake realized it was only just beginning.